And we are live. So, hello everybody. We are currently broadcasting not in total darkness, but without a functioning camera. So, apologies for that. From the long room at the town hall, and today is the meeting of the shareholder and joint venture group for Oxford City Council companies on Wednesday, 1st of March at 6 o'clock. So I'll start off with apologies for absence, and I have apologies for absence from Councillor Ed Turner and also from Councillor Mike Rowley. Are there any other apologies? I'm not seeing or hearing any, so we will move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that we need to make? No, I'm not seeing any. Okay. I think, are now going to, do we now move into private session?
No, not first of all. We've got the open session for the external auditor.
Right. Yeah. Fine. Okay, thank you very much. So there's quite a lot of noise somewhere. I'm not sure whether someone's knocking a microphone, but I don't know what's happening. So we then in that case move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is scrutiny, comments and or recommendations. So bearing in mind we're on the open agenda. I think Nigel, yeah, thank you. I think that's better. Thanks, Nigel. So we move on to scrutiny, comments and recommendations. So James, over to you.
We haven't actually met as scrutiny, but I have one question comment, which is related partly to my role in audit and governance. I mean, I know we have Mazars for the companies and we have Ernst & Young for the city. I just wonder, is there, and I'm looking, he doesn't realise it, Nigel Kennedy up there, is there any merit at all in trying to have one set of auditors? Because I know they've been rather blaming one another in terms of the delay. We haven't even signed off on our 21-22 accounts. And I think Ernst & Young blamed Mazars, everyone blames QL, but I just wonder, we're not wildly enamoured of Ernst & Young, but we get it through a kind of block contract with other councils.
Thank you, James. Nigel, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, I mean, the appointment of Ernst & Young is done under a national tender, which is led by the PSAA, the Public Sector Auditing Authority, actually. And has reported before, EY have been appointed for the next 5-year period, actually. That doesn't actually cover company audits, basically. And we go out separately, basically, or City Council goes out separately under tender to find auditors for all of our entities. And that's the subject of some of the reports that you'll see tonight, basically, and the rationale around trying to get one set of auditor for both our wholly owned companies and our entities, such as Barton, actually. But I'll come on to that later on. So there's effectively 2 separate tenders. One is managed by PSAA and one is managed by the City Council for the rest of its entities.
Thanks, Nigel. I realised, by the way, that normally, of course, when we're speaking, we have sort of subtitles which say who we are and so on. And I probably should have introduced myself when I spoke, because we are live streaming. So this is Councillor Susan Brown, leader of the City Council, speaking, and it would be really helpful if when people speak, they could just say who they are and what their role is on this particular committee. So thank you very much for that. So I think we are therefore moving on to the external auditor appointments, and starting off with the external auditor. Sorry,
just a possible declaration of interest, just that I've become aware of. So I did work for Ernst & Young in India, but not in the audit division, and it was in the sustainability practice. So I just thought, since EY was mentioned, it's worth me just mentioning. But I do also have a question related to yeah, some feedback from scrutiny if that's still possible.
So I think Marcia, who's here as monitoring officer, is indicating that isn't a declarable interest. So thank you, but don't worry about it. But do carry on with your question, Catherine, and say who you are.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Catherine Miles, and I'm one of the company scrutiny panel members. First time today. Yeah, sure. Just with respect to the delayed audit, I just would like some clarity around the overlap of the implications of the overlap with the financial close down for 21-22, and the fact that the financial carryovers are not going to be available. And there are two concerns really, and just would seek feedback on that. What about the corporate reputational risks that we have, and then also, are there any financial consequences of this that are risks for us? Thank you.
Nigel, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, some of this possibly is not for this meeting, given that it refers to the specific audit of another one of our wholly owned companies, actually, Oxford Direct Services. So unless people are frowning at me, and I can't actually see that, basically, but so I would like to reserve some of the comments basically for that meeting, actually. But I think in terms of principle, basically, I mean, clearly companies are required to submit their accounts basically by the end of December in the year preceding the year of account, actually, to Companies House. And if you don't do that, then you need to request extensions. Clearly, we're having some difficulty in closing some of the accounts on one of our wholly owned companies. And as explained in the reports, basically, that has a knock-on effect, basically, as Councillor Miles refers to the 22-23 close down process. We just have to manage that, basically. We have to basically state the balances to our best ability that we are bringing forward, basically. But there will undoubtedly be some cost overruns in terms of, obviously, the work that needs to be done to 21-2 accounts to get them closed, but also probably to 22-3 as well, because of that knock-on effect. In terms of reputational damage, I would go back to say that the main issue relates to one of the companies that is not the subject of the meeting tonight. And basically, I think I'll reserve comments until that particular shareholder meeting. The companies that we are talking about tonight, i.e. OX Place and Barton, are not affected by that delay to the final accounts, actually.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Nigel. That's helpful. Right, I do think we need to move on to the report now. So the report 4A is, so part 4 on the agenda is external auditor appointments, and part 4A is a report into appointing the external auditor appointment for Barton Oxford LLP. Jane, are you here to? No.
It's me, Susan.
It's going to be you, Nigel. Sorry,
yeah.
I saw Jane switch her camera on, and I thought, sure, she's leaping in to present the report, but no, she's very happy to leave that to you, Nigel. Okay.
Yeah. So as I explained earlier, actually, the council goes out to tender for the external auditors on its wholly owned companies and indeed its entities, namely Barton in this case as well. The tender of the current contract for the external auditor Mazars runs up to and including the audit for 21-22, and ordinarily we would be looking to go to tender basically to secure auditors basically from April 22 onwards. Actually, given what I've said about the some of the difficulties we are experiencing with another one of the City Council's wholly owned companies, again not on the meeting tonight actually, but there is merit basically in appointing or Mazars extending the current contract by 1 year from Mazars basically in order that we can complete the 21-2 audit and then they can move on to the 22-3. In fact, it would be extremely difficult basically to try and appoint another set of audit firm basically to start on 22-3 accounts when indeed some of the 21-2 accounts have not been completed. We endeavoured to try and get the same entity to audit our wholly owned companies and our entities. And that's another reason why we would want to, as contained in this report, seek authority to extend the contract for Mazars, basically, as in the case of Barton, for that 1 year period. We have been in discussion with Grosvenor, who are the City Council's partner in respect to Barton, and they want to just take stock, basically, in terms of discussions with Mazars, which I've agreed to. And this has come to light since the report was written, actually. And whilst they still firmly believe they will appoint Mazars, I think they just want to, I suppose, just go back on the costs, basically, that are outlined here. The costs, just to sort of say, the costs are something that we are seeing, basically, in all our external audit fees, and including that of the City Council. So I don't have a problem, but Grosvenor just want to go back and push Mazars to see whether these costs can be improved at all, actually. So I think there is a slight change to the recommendation, perhaps to give me delegated authority, basically, following discussion with the partnership board, basically, for the appointment of Mazars, basically. As I say, Grosvenor verbally have said they will more than likely go down the Mazars route, but they just want to test some things out. So in a slight change to the audit recommendation, I would like to ask the committee to approve the principal appointing Mazars, but give me delegated approval to agree that with the partnership board, which is a number of officers from the council, as well as those from Grosvenor.
I mean, the recommendation does say to approve in principle the appointment of Mazars as external auditor, whilst noting that the appointment will need to be formally approved by the partnership board. So maybe it's, do we need to just add in a clause which is something like, whilst noting that the, sorry, what role are you playing here, Nigel?
I think I'm trying to pick up the potential that Mazars are not the appointed auditor. If Grosvenor have a problem, and Grosvenor are a 50-50 partner, Grosvenor do all the accounting as well, basically. So if they have a problem, I want to give myself leeway to agree that, basically. So yeah, perhaps I could find some wording outside of this, actually.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that the wording needs to be changed, because you're going to have to come back to us if you want us to appoint someone different. So it says approve in principle the appointment of Mazars as external auditor, whilst noting the appointment will need to be formally approved by the partnership board. So it's not appointing them, because the partnership board is ultimately appointing them. And if the partnership board decides they don't want to appoint Mazars and they need to appoint someone else, you're going to have to come back to us anyway, aren't you?
Yes, I think I will do, actually. So unless Jane's got any comment as a member of the partnership board, basically, I mean, perhaps we can leave this, and on the event that we don't appoint, perhaps I'll have to come back to the shareholders. Jane.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's highly likely. You know, Grosvenor really want Mazars on it. I think their issue is that to them, what we've said about costs escalated, etc., they're not necessarily seeing the same escalation. Well, they won't, because they've probably got hundreds of joint ventures and separate companies. So what they want to do is just look at the quite rightly, because they run that side of the LLP.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking around the room. Anna.
Yes, I'm Councillor Anna Elton. So there's a 4 and 5 in here talks about the difficulty of getting an external auditor, and is this likely to be a constant risk going forward, and how can we mitigate it if it is?
Thanks, Anna. Nigel.
I don't think it's a difficulty going forward, actually. I think the difficulty is because of our position with another one of our entities, actually. And the fact that we haven't, and even the City Council has not closed down his 21-2 accounts yet. That's the difficulty in bringing another auditor in to look at that. So I think going forward, we should be fine. And if we can get this extension here, basically, then 23-4, we'll be in a better place, actually. So don't have a problem going forward. But I think for 22-3, I think that would be difficult. So hence why, and you'll see the next report as well, why the recommendation is to try and stick with Mazars, actually. But I do understand where Grosvenor are coming from, and they do all the financing. Obviously, the City Council having sold its land onto the Barton LLP, basically, we don't have that same sort of skin in the game as Grosvenor do, actually. So it's completely correct that they want to just press Mazars basically on the cost.
Thanks,
Right,
Michael.
I was just taking some advice from the Chief Executive on how we might amend the recommendations. So I have a proposal for you, Nigel, which is that we add in a bullet point 3, which is and delegate detailed negotiations of terms to the Head of Financial Services. Does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Good. Okay. Well, I will then move that when we get to that point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. My point probably might be related to Anna's point about risk, but I want you to comment how we're going to preserve the auditors independent, because obviously Mazars are going to be auditing all our 3 companies. So what is your comment on their independence? My name is Shawe Mukonge, Kasacho Mukonge, the shareholder. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chewy. I mean, all I can go, I mean, obviously the auditors run on a set of professional ethics, and I have no problem with the Mazars basically being independent, actually, in all of the entities. It's not been a problem in previous years. And I say the problem that arises, the reason for these reports and how they're phrased is because of our issues regarding 21-2. I don't have a problem with the independence of Mazars on any of the entities.
Right. I would like us to move to the recommendations. I don't really feel there's any great deal more to discuss on this issue. So noting the additional recommendation that I added in, which is that we also delegate to the Head of Financial Services detailed negotiations of terms. Are we happy to make those recommendations?
Yes.
And obviously you can't see this, but I can assure you that everyone in the room has raised, all voting shareholders have raised their hands. So that has passed. So thank you very much, everybody. Right, we now move on to agenda item 4B, which is the appointment of Oxford City Housing Group external auditor. So Nigel, back to you.
Yeah, so exactly the same issue, which I won't recap basically, but the outcome really is to request shareholders to approve the appointment of Mazars as an extension for the 22-23 financial statements. And I suppose noting that we will be going out to tender in 2023-24. There is a note in one of the following reports from the managing director from OX Place, which also gives comfort to shareholders around their board's approval to this recommendation. So I think it's fairly straightforward, actually, Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any. Oh, no, there is. Councillor Nigel Chapman.
It's Nigel Chapman, Councillor Chapman. It's just more of a comment that you're right to note that the fees are doubling in both cases. And the other issue we're going to get is if we don't present our material on time to auditors, then the overrun costs will become quite significant. And we can't put a figure on that. What I'm seeing in other places is that auditors don't have much slack. So if you miss your slot, it's a bit like an airplane arriving at the airport. If you miss your slot, you don't get back on the runway for quite a long time afterwards, and that causes significant cost overruns. So I just think we should note that it is a risk. but I support the proposal.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a point well noted indeed, Nigel. So thank you for that. Both Nigels. I'm not seeing anyone else indicating. So can we just move straight to the recommendations on this one, which is to note the current position and to approve the appointment of Mazars for this Oxford City Housing Group. Sorry, trying to find the name of the company at the top. Is everyone happy to support that? And again, for everyone who can't see, that was everyone who's a voting shareholder voting to support that recommendation. So thank you all very much for that. Right, we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5A, which is the report from Sarah into the quarterly progress on Barton Oxford LLP. So Sarah, over to you. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I'm Sarah Knight. I'm the head of development and here in my capacity as a member of the project group at Barton LLP. So you'll be sort of fairly familiar with these reports and their format now. The LLP is kind of up and running and the house building is progressing at Barton. I'm not particularly intending to labour any points, but rather take it as read and answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Are there any questions or comments from anybody? Anna.
Councillor Anna Elton. So do we know why Redrow are slowing down on site?
Sarah.
I think, as I've outlined at the beginning of the report, I think all the national house builders at the moment are looking at their programmes and taking stock. I think that's happening across the country. I don't think that's any different here. I don't think there's anything specific about Barton that's meaning that they're slowing down. I think it's just a response to overall market conditions. So I think, I don't think there's any more to it than that, really.
Certainly, yesterday's housing advisory group, I think it was something that. Which is the meeting of all the kind of housing leads across the county. I think it's a general picture that everyone was picking up in terms of house building at the moment. James.
I'm actually doing this on behalf of the absent Mike Rowley councillor. I'm James Fry. He comments on item 5A, paragraph 9. He says, having met with the representative of Vistry, who seemed to have little idea what the build schedule was for the third phase, I'm unfortunately not surprised by the statement that handover may be delayed. What is the timescale for this? Have we impressed on the contractor the importance of keeping on the same staff who've already worked on the contract in detail rather than starting from scratch?
Thanks, James. Sarah, are you able to answer that?
Yeah, thank you. So I was at the same meeting as Councillor Rowley, and I think the Vistry colleague didn't particularly instill confidence, it's fair to say. Since then, there's been some progress made in terms of our points of contact with Vistry. And actually, we've seen a photograph today of them making some actual progress on site. So I think this has just been a bedding in of the merger happening between Countryside and Vistry. And I think as the LLP, it's our responsibility to kind of to forge those relationships. Given where the site was, which is that Countryside hadn't really started, it isn't the worst time for this sort of change to be happening. I think we'd be more concerned if they were mid-build. So I think it's just a case of us impressing on them that they need to sort of comply with their obligations, maybe remind them of those obligations. But I don't think there's any particular cause for concern there.
Thanks, Sarah. Alex.
Councillor Alex Hollingsworth, shareholder. The 3B phase and the discussion in paragraph 11 of the Hillside case, which is an interesting planning case relating to a park in Snowdonia from 1967. The issue with this has always been that site 3B was essentially all the units had already been delivered on all the other sites, and if we were to deliver any sites on units on site 3B, it would be in addition to the original outline planning permission. So that's always been the case. What's the additional risk that's been identified here? Because it seems to me that this isn't a great change, and that the case in question hasn't changed much. People hoped it would, and it didn't.
Sarah, you want to answer that one? Yeah. Okay.
As I understand it, and we have had advice from both lawyers and planning consultants on this, it's the case kind of created more of an atmosphere where the 3B application could be seen as this slot in. Now that risk is for the LLP to bear in terms of its obligations to the other its other house builders, I suppose. And I don't know the technical details of the planning case, but essentially I think it puts it at more risk than it did previously. So it's less about the overall numbers and more about the additional planning application under the outline consent.
Can I have a follow-up? So the proposed resolution is to alter the outline. What alteration and how? I mean, would it be involved taking the red lines that 3B is not part of the LLP, which would be the easiest alteration?
Exactly that, yeah. Can I hire you on our team? Yeah, so that was the proposal. To be fair, we haven't spoken to the LPA about that yet, so we need to do that. But that's the proposal.
Joey.
Thank you very much. Probably my question would be in the follow-up of what Mike was asking or his concerns. I just want you to describe the working relationship with Vistry, obviously because it's halfway, they've taken over Countryside. So how would you describe the working relationship with them?
I think it's an evolving relationship, and I think it's one we're going to have to work on in the context of things like the community employment plan, as well as their actual build responsibilities. And I think that's really important to us. Clearly, with a different hat on, we also are buying the affordable homes. So there's a relationship there that we need to develop as well. And the LLP will be doing all the things that it would have done with Countryside with Vistry. So all the checks on quality and all that work. And the fundamental contract between the LLP and Countryside / Vistry hasn't changed. So it'll be progressing that contract.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Right, I've done it. You put your hands up at the same time. So I'll go Catherine first and then over to Nigel.
Okay. Would you be able to just provide an update on the pedestrian and cycle links with respect to paragraph 18, which is referred to in terms of the discussions continuing between Dorchester Group and the LLP?
Can you just say who you are, Catherine?
Councillor Catherine Miles, I'm the scrutiny.
Thank you. I don't think they've moved on massively since I wrote the paper. The discussions have been initial in response to Dorchester's planning application. So we know what Dorchester are trying to achieve, but obviously the progress will depend on their planning application getting approved, which I believe is currently in at the moment. So that'll evolve as that conversation goes on.
Thanks, Sarah. Nigel and then Linda.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Chapman, shareholder. Can I take you to paragraph 14 in your report, which is about the community employment plan? Clearly, the merger seems to have slowed involvement. How solid is this? I mean, is this a set of aspirations that we put in front of developers, or is it something more watertight that they would use local people to build, apprenticeships, etc., etc., etc.? Can you just give us some context to that, please?
Yeah, of course. It's been worked through with the LEP and us, so Cat Armstrong, and it's relatively watertight. They have signed up to it, so it's been done as a steering group rather than just us imposing it on them. I think we do need to see the outcomes of that, and that's going to be by the end of March. They promised us, and I think we are impressing on them that it's been disappointing that we've had this delay, and it is really important. I think what we're trying to pull from that is quantitative, so numbers of people, local labour, and also some qualitative stuff as well, and it's designed to do that.
Thanks very much, Linda.
Thank you. If the final phase does turn out to be 100% affordable housing, could you just tell us what that brings the overall percentage up to in terms of affordable housing across Barton Park?
I'll have to come back to you with precision accuracy, but it will take it well over the 50% mark. Okay.
Which is fantastic. So thank you very much. Great. Okay. I feel that we've had a good chew around that report. So thank you very much for the update, Sarah. I'm not seeing anything else from anyone. So can we note that report? We are now at the point where we are going to move into confidential session because the rest of the agenda is on the confidential session. So can I now I have to get the right wording here. So we need to pass a resolution in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 4 brackets 2 brackets B of the local authorities brackets executive arrangements brackets access to information brackets England regulations 2012 on the grounds that the presence could involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as described in specific paragraphs of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Pause for breath. So